Welcome to
Hi.
another
Hello.
episode of uh,
A retail
yeah. So
story.
today we're going to talk about the roles. Is there what do you call a gap in when I'm talking?
Lag.
Yeah, I think there's a lag in
Lag,
your
yes, lag.
yeah.
Because there is a pause every time I'm talking.
Yeah, your screen is frozen to
There's
me at
no
least. Yeah. Okay, now it's moving.
frozen.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think okay. So yeah. So today we're going to talk about the roles and responsibilities for buyer and planner
Merchandiser. Yeah.
in yeah merchandise yeah retail merchandiser or planner and what they are and what they do, and we'll also talk about different types of organizations or business structures so that we can understand that uh, what what they do in each type of an organization.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so at a top level, I think the buyer does the buying plan and the planner does the sales plan, or the planner or the retail merchandiser does the, I keep calling planner because I think that in my last job they had called it a retail planner, or retail merchandiser does the sales plan, or the sales plan, the top line plan at the top level. And then at the bottom level, basically buyer signs off for all the documents for purchases of the merchandise. So that's why they're called buyers. And retail planners kind of search signs off for all the allocations at the ground level. At the bottommost level, they sign off for all the allocations that happens to these merchandise which has been bought, uh, all the allocations that goes to the retail stores that has been bought,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much, yes. I
and
think yeah.
and I think, yeah, okay, so
So yeah,
let
we
me
can
share the screen.
elaborate more on that, no? A little bit more on like what retail planner. So for example, for me, both my organizations, my role of buyer and planner was mixed. But essentially in my second organization, the buyer was a little bit more defined because the range, which we call the range, that is the product that's going to be launched in the next year for the same season. So the buyer was responsible for going through many styles and then was required to make a selection. And buyer is also required to make a selection through an understanding of the top lines, but also what is going to be what has been forecasted. So there is a merge of two kind of understandings from the buyers side, what was selling before and how the fashion is going to change. So that gives you an idea of what to buy for the season when you are planning. So this is what was the job for a buyer in the organization where I was working. Like they were responsible for this and like signing off the purchase documents and asking for giving the orders.
Yeah.
But essentially, it was selecting the entire range that would then flow into the stores later.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yes. I mean, it can be in certain like smaller organizations. It can be a role where you are doing buying and merchandising, and this I've seen mostly in India, where retail is organized retail is just still growing. But here in the UK, which is an older retail industry, an established retail industry, you usually see there would be a buying team and a merchandising team. That's how it's mostly set up. And then the roles can be further defined. And they're not interchangeable, they're doing pretty much different kinds of jobs at the workplace. Like from a top line view, just to add to that, I think the buyer is looking ahead at planning the inventory, the assortment. It could mean that the buying team is working with design teams, or if they don't have a design team, maybe they are spotting the future trends, and then they're also like working with the vendors, trying to get new vendors in if they need, and then sampling the product, getting the product at the right cost. So they are actually deciding the future ranges. I don't think they're like that involved in the current trading seasons. uh, it's only for like analysis, but usually they're always planning ahead. Whereas merchandising, like we've spoken so many times, they are looking back, they're looking trading the current season, and they're also like looking at the future numbers. But like the future numbers come into play only once the buyers have decided on an assortment, they've sampled a range. Um, if they are functioning as two different roles, like under two different teams, but interchangeably, like where you are expected to do a buying or a merchandising role, then the buying role just becomes about selecting your assortment. Maybe someone else has, like a centralized team has done that bit, and you just step in to select the assortment for your region, your stores. Yeah, that's
Yeah. So I
how I
think,
understand it.
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think in places where the range is being developed, so there could be like in a in an international for an international brand where the range is being developed, the job of a buyer would be very different. And like in India, the buyers are actually just kind of selecting, and they may not do so much sampling. But then there are brands importing from
Yeah.
here, so there is sampling and vendor selection. All of that also happens.
Yeah, I think all Indian retailers like Westside, Shoppers Stop,
They are
who
doing
have
it, yes.
offices, yeah. And I think Pantaloons, I think it's shut now, but they did have like their own private labels, so they would have had buying teams and merchandising teams, and either they for Westside, I remember that they would have a design agency for women's wear. Everybody had a login to WGSN to
Mm.
spot trends. Um, and then yes, you would also like attend some fashion events to see what the future trends were, like an accessory fashion show or a women's wear, like some designers fashion show, just to spot those trends. So I think buying was mostly doing that bit, and I think they did have some consultants from like Australia. They would look at the catalogs from foreign retailers. So I think that's what buying would look like. But like what Shrishti is saying, that yes, international brands, they would just send you a catalog to choose from, or maybe like a sample set to have a look at, or you attend a
Mm.
buying event where you are shown the entire range. I think that's also what's usually done
Yeah.
for
Yeah, they call
international
it
brands.
road
Yeah.
show, right? You attend the road shows
Yeah. And you see the,
run by the brands.
I think that is probably the most popular way of showcasing. Like, um, even with the brand that I worked here, there would be an international event in Germany where everybody from all regions, all different countries would travel. And then you would see the whole range modeled. And so you would see the actual product, and you can touch and feel the garments later. And then you would have those catalog copies. So you make a selection of, you have an idea of what you would be selecting.
Mm.
But yeah, but we were like far removed from creating the range. We had nothing. We would just put in like feedback as the data, that this is what worked, this did not work, and these are the colors that have worked, prints that have worked. That was probably our only input. So we weren't developing the range. We were not responsible for any of that bit. But yeah, and I think for I haven't worked in an export house, but I think do they have a buying team in an export house? Are there buyers in an export house, or are they called by? Do they go by a
No,
different
they're
name?
called export
Merchandisers.
merchandisers.
What merchandisers?
Yeah, they're called merchandisers, and then they talk in an export house and like a buying house or an export house, and they talk to the other factories, and they coordinate, and then they also talk to the buyer of the brand, and they coordinate the yeah. So there's no buyer, and they also have a sampling team, but the sampling team doesn't directly sometimes reports to the export merchandisers. The sampling team and the sampling merchandiser is somebody who's different. The sampling merchandiser in an export house reports to a marketing team or a BD business development team. So that the business development team asks for certain collections. The sampling team and the sampling merchandiser and the designers they get these things done, and then whenever these business development people want to go for any of the travels to the other brands, then they get a sample done, and then the business development people take those samples and show to different buyers in different countries and different brands, and then they get the order and they come back. So it's a
Okay.
kind of a completely a different
So
altogether
all
thing. So there
so
will be a
that falls
production
under
export merchandiser and there's a sampling
okay,
merchandiser that's there.
sampling merchandiser. All right. Yeah, I think yes, it's different. I mean, you don't get to see a lot of export houses or manufacturers here in the UK, but I think India it's very common. In fact, like that's a more established industry. Retail is fairly new in India, but it's different here. Retail is established, but we don't have manufacturers or big factories doing at least fashion apparels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like
Yeah, because of
merchandising.
costs, I think they're all being
I
done.
think yeah, completely yes. Um, I mean, the Germany did have like manufacturers. So the lingerie brand that I work for, they did have factories, but a lot of it was outsourced. Yeah, it was outsourced to all the regions that everybody outsources it to. So mostly China and Turkey would do something, but I think they owned their manufacturing unit, but it was like
Bangladesh.
not necessarily be produced in Germany. Some would, but not all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is buyer's role. We can maybe like quickly say talk about the stages a buyer would be like maybe the role of a buyer. If do you think that would help? Like what a buyer does, like what their inputs would be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it depends. Like, at what point does the buyer start? I think people don't also understand that when they see something at this in the store, it has been planned for over a year.
Hmm.
That the plans have been made and the product and the orders have been placed well in advance so that the product can come in. So what currently a buyer would be working on, at least at this point of time, if there are buyers, then they would be working on 2026, and whatever is planned for 2026 has already come in. So that timeline also is nice to just go through,
Yeah,
that how it begins and how many seasons are we do they plan.
yeah. I think from purely like buying, like if you were a part of a buying team, I think it starts at like you said, you would be planning ahead. You will not, 26 would be like all planned. So for 27, you would start with, getting in touch with your vendors if they had like lines, or maybe like working very closely with the design team, planning your newness for 27, let's say. Let's take that as an example. Then I think you start sampling the lines. You look at samples, if there are any changes like in buying roles previously. I've seen that the samples are not right in the first instance. So sometimes you ask for correction. Sometimes just to fit a cost, you might ask them that can you just remove this trim, this pocket we do not need, this extra button or an extra zip, so that it sits in the costing that you want, so that it's reflective of the retail price point that you want to sell it at. And then, like I said, that at that point, before you start working on your samples, you will have done your research on WGSN, spotting any trends from fashion shows around the world, or if it's fashion, if it's like one of those products where you need to spot a trend, and yeah, just seeing what's available. If there are any gaps, I think that's what they're looking at before they create the sample range. Once they have the sample, they also do the same. They go through the same process of selecting what works, what doesn't work, what they would like to keep as options, and then a tight option is usually decided as a plan, and then the numbers start coming in. So buying will work on this while merchandisers work on their separate data for next year, and then at some point the two unite when they have to like collectively work. So once the range is prepared, I think that's where the numbers then finally come in. But they will have, like, to begin with, they will have an idea of how many options at least are required. They will have some indication of that. We need like 50 styles for 27, or we need like 100 styles. And how does it look broken down by
Yeah.
subcategory? So maybe that indication might have come from a planner or a merchandiser and their own understanding of how the previous seasons looked. So yeah, then I think it's like
Yeah. I think
collective work.
in companies we Hmm. So in like at the end of the season, after you have discounted, there is always you in one of the companies we had something called the lessons learned,
Yeah.
what categories did well, what subcategories did well, whether the options were adequate, whether they so I so this was analysis of what had gone well and whether there were things needed and something that needed improvement. And then these were then fed into the buying team as as part of the analysis of
Yeah.
the range.
Yeah.
So and then when it came time to develop a new range, the buyer already had with the range that they had produced before. And
Yeah.
if there were more options needed, like in the other organization, they were always like, should we put more colors in, or we needed more colors in the options in the t-shirt, or more options in jeans. So those kind of things came before the buyer started making the plan. So that was, I think there was a meeting much before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of this follows through from what we have discussed, Mahesh, like the OTB. Once the sales forecasting is done, then the OTB is created. You get an indicated number of what your requirement for 27 is. That's what everything is worked, uh,
Yeah,
like, yeah, worked for. You're working to achieving that number then.
yeah, by the buyer.
Yeah. I think the buyers
Mm.
and then, yes, the merchandisers will also like, once the quantity has to be decided, stores have to be determined. I think that all is like a activity done together. Srishti's
True,
gone.
yes. Industries.
Yeah. I think
Just
over here,
dropping.
buying is considered like a very fancy role, but I think they are mostly doing all the, they're like doing all the networking, like collecting data from outside. I think that's their role. So I remember like when I was working in Bombay, we were expected to attend for home. I was a homeware buyer, like home buyer. So, but I was expected to attend all those, those fairs that you have, home fairs around the city. Those, and then we would like go and like speak to vendors from across India in that fair,
Yeah,
and
buyers are always a fancy role
it is a fancy road, but they also have to
because you
make all
get
those
to.
external connections. I mean, either you like it or you don't. But
That's true.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
like
But you
merchandiser
get to
can just,
travel, you get to meet more
yeah,
people,
yeah.
you
Merchandiser
get to
can just
sign
like work
checks.
from the system as long as all the data is there. You can just put your head down and put your headphones on and like work. But I think for buying, it was more in the office, but also outside the office. And then, yeah, yes. So that
Yeah,
was.
that's true.
So I don't know how many like even like competitor analysis like fell. We were like constantly looking out for new retailers, new vendors, which meant that we were out and about quite a lot. Maybe 30% of the time we would be doing that as well. So yeah, that's essentially like buying like whatever collection you would see in a retail store. Um, Somebody puts that into place right from you know um, planning the range to finally getting it ready and in the store. There's a lot of work that happens. So all of that mostly like falls within the buying um, role. And
Yeah, that's true.
from planning and merchandising, that's I think we've been like talking quite a bit about it, all the work.
Yeah, we talked about. I think I have a PowerPoint. I'll just share this, and then maybe we'll
Yeah.
discuss. I thought I'll share my screen. Yeah, this is the window that I want to share. Ha, this is the one I want to share. Here,
Yeah.
there is a manufacturer, and these are different types of businesses. Let's not talk about distributor and the warehouse because that's not a business. But there is a retailer, there's a brand, there's a manufacturer. These are three major businesses, and a brand is somebody who can sell in an exclusive brand outlet, and they can also give it to a retailer and sell it in a multi-brand outlet. A brand
Yeah.
is like any brand which is like which is in internationally, which is like Zara and all of that. Zara covers into an exclusive brand outlet, and a retailer is someone who basically sells multi-brand outlet by talking to a brand. Internationally, retailers are which does
And Marks and
multi-brand outlet. I
Spencer
think
is a retailer. Yeah.
next
I think bigger formats.
Marks and Spencer comes actually they call themselves retailer, but then yeah, they're a retailer. Yes, they are a retailer, and also Next is also a
Is
retailer,
different.
but then they sell multi-brand outlet. So Marks and Spencer is a retailer, but then they all of them they don't do not do other brands. They only do in-house labels. It's 100%. I think 100% or
I think in
ninety nine
India it's just
percent
probably Marks and
in-house labels.
Spencer. But I think now they have started keeping like
Mhm.
other brands as well. But yeah, they are retailers. They are like classified as retailers. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so they are retailers which has 100% in-house labels, and then there's a manufacturer who talks to either a retailer which has got a mix of a brand and a mix of an in-house label, which is in-house label is nothing but a fancy term for a brand. The retailer's brand is an in-house label,
Hmm.
and then there's a manufacturer who talks to the retailer or who talks to the brand. So yeah, so this is the structure. So when for a buyer and a merchandiser in a brand, the buyer is basically talking to the manufacturer. The connection is around. The buyer and the brand is actually basically talking to the manufacturer, and the retail merchandiser in a brand will talk to the will get make sure that all the exclusive brand outlets get the stock. They also talk. There is another set of retail merchandiser which will talk to the retailers also where their brands are there, so that their stocking is proper in the multi-brand outlets. So they do the analysis and all that. So when they talk to the retailer, they call it as key accounts, right? There are certain very one merchandiser will be talking to all the retailers, and one retail merchandiser will be talking to all the exclusive brand outlets of the brand. If you're talking about the brand, and then of course the buyer will be coordinating and forecasting and getting the range all of that. In a brand, usually the buyer will also talk to the designer and the sampling team, and getting the samples done, talking to the manufacturer, getting the samples done with the manufacturer, and so on and so forth. At least they will have a designer, if not a sampling team. Maybe they will outsource the sampling team also from the manufacturer. So, and then in a retailer, the buyer and merchandiser, the buyer basically, there are two types of buyers. So, like how there are two types of merchandisers, retail merchandisers in a brand, there are two types of buyers and retailers, which is one type of a buyer is one who buys from the brand, the one who goes to the road shows and all of that and buys to the brand. Another buyer is an in-house label buyer who will again talk to the manufacturers to get the stock done, like just like the brand buyer, they will behave like a in-house label buyer. And there is also a retail merchandiser who will coordinate and make sure that all the stocking and all the forecast and all the things are properly stocked in the multi-brand outlet. Basically a retailer has got a multi-brand outlet, and then there's in-house label is just a department in a retailer, so there's not a big. And then the third one that we talked about is the manufacturer. So the manufacturer does not have neither a buyer or a retail merchandiser. They will have an export merchandiser. Like we spoke, there were two export merchandisers. One is a sampling merchandiser, and then the production merchandiser.
Okay.
So the production merchandiser will take care, coordinate all the production things, and the sampling merchandiser will talk to the sampling department and also will coordinate with either the brand or through the in-house label of the retailer. So that's there are other components, but then pretty much we talked about a brand, a retailer, and a manufacturer, and different scenarios. So I thought that I'll just share this so that there's another perspective of this whole thing. Yes.
So are you sharing another screen, Mahesh?
No, not that. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. Um,
Yes. So that's
yeah, I
that's
think,
how
I mean,
the
essentially, like
different.
I think for somebody who doesn't understand the industry, it is like people who are deciding, making product decisions are the buyers, and then people who are actually looking at the numbers and uh, quantities, the values, margins, any data analysis, or how what the distribution should look like in respect to stores would be like the
Mm-hmm.
merchandisers. So any numbers, any inputs of numbers
Right.
that comes in like is handled by merchandising. And that's what I think Shrishti was saying that
By
in
the
it's
retail merchandiser, yes.
yeah. In smaller companies it is like interchangeably used. So you just are doing both. I think even when you're a category manager and you just have like a smaller team, I think you essentially are looking at both. You are doing your product selection and the assortment planning along with somebody who inputs the numbers and the analysis for previous seasons and somebody who's trading the season right now. I think that's what mostly it is. But the tasks that we've mentioned is are the tasks that have to be taken care of by someone.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I think over here I'm like trying to think like what other roles. Sometimes they're called as inventory planner. Inventory planning would be more about once you've placed an order, or if it's um yeah, closer to like what a merchandiser
Mm.
does.
Yeah.
But if you're working for FMCG or if you're working for a brand which just has, or a retailer just has core styles, and there isn't like too much happening, no, not a lot of changes are happening season on, then I think sometimes
It's
you're
only
just
replenishment.
replenishment. So in that case, you are literally checking where your inventory is. Is it leaving? So there's a lot of tracking. Like it's more supply chain centric. I feel that role. You're just tracking where your inventory went. You're Yes, you're looking at your covers. Like in one of the FMCGs that I was a part of for a bit, the covers were very small. There were 2 weeks, which meant like you're literally working under that pressure, where you have to find out where is your inventory, has it arrived in the warehouse, has it been inverted, has it left, So that was the kind of work that they were doing there, more than um, analysis or changing the range, because the range did not change much. And I think you have very limited freedom, or you're actually limited by the space allocated to you. If you work for an FMCG, there has to be like a proper shelf that an item goes on, so there's not a lot of change usually happening from one season to the other. So over there, I think you're mostly managing the inventory.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
It's mostly then it becomes more like a supply chain
yeah.
planning because uh, there's no much of a dynamic decision that needs to be done with respect to size, style,
Yeah.
merchandise type, and all of that. It is just the same thing on, and you know what's going to happen. You just look at
Yeah.
the cover and you try to keep a smooth coordination between all the parties in the whole
Yeah.
transaction.
Yeah. Because there's like we discussed, like Boots, a drugstore doesn't have too many discounts, but something that's which is closing its end date, manufacturing end date, you just put them in a bin and discount it. So those kinds of decision making maybe are required, but you're not actually planning an end of season sale like how we've discussed in a session. You're not doing that in an FMCG, I think. So the roles are very different. Then you're doing inventory management and more logistic planning, how you're moving your inventory, because they work on smaller and shorter covers. And yeah, managing your relations with vendors, because you could have a L'Oreal, you could have, those, if you're in cosmetics, if you're a cosmetics retailer, then you're like maintaining those relationships with all different brands, brands. I mean, that falls under their role. What do you think in a startup? Do you think these roles are required if you're somebody's, because usually that's such a top line thing in the beginning.
What are you saying? I didn't
No,
get the
I'm saying
question,
that.
Snigdha. You
Do you think that as at a startup, do you think these roles are important? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if they have to have a particular, it's not. I mean, I just we had this conversation about startup, not startup. It is most not because of the startup or not startup. It is how much. What is the quantum of the turnover that they want to do, right? If they just like a few collections and they just want to have it's the number of zeros they are looking at achieving, right? Like
Yeah.
if it's like
Yeah.
only a 10,000 US dollar that they're wanting to look for a year, or are they looking for like 100,000? Then you need more people and more work, and or if it's like a million US dollars that they're looking for a year. So it depends on what it doesn't depends on whether they're new or old in the whole thing, but then rather on how much turnover that they are looking at, the quantum of work and the volume of the merchandise that's been traded
Yeah.
determines that. So the greater the volume, then so I imagine this that all the departments came into existence because initially people would have thought that everybody can manage everything, but then because the quantum was so big, then they thought that okay, let's give the forecasting and the buying part to one guy, and let's give the planning, the understanding and analysis and understanding and sales, all of that to another guy. So it depends. As the quantum increases, then the roles becomes much more what do you call that, specific and much more defined. But as the top line or the quantum decreases, then it becomes much more broader, and then people can handle everything in the business. So it really depends on what is that aiming at. There are startups who just want like $1 million sales in the first year, then they need this team.
Yeah.
I think for smaller businesses also, like when we started the sari business, we actually didn't do much uh, analysis. But down the line, like couple of months down the line, or maybe a year down the line, we also had to do a little bit of analysis because we could clearly see that there were some saris, and purely because there were certain numbers that were coming through certain types of saris. So like the Kanjivarams were doing much more than the other types, and therefore the your buying plan then starts to reflect that. So though you in the beginning the functions can be held by one person, but as the complexity and as the top line and as the aim for the business increases, you will want to specialize. And because now
Yeah.
there will be more
Yeah.
so many more people involved, and one department or even one person may not be able to handle the magnitude of work that is required. So just for the ease of doing, like becoming more efficient, you will have to eventually
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this. But of course, like even a startup which has a very big plan will have to start in the beginning with a team that is like this, like how Mintra must have
Yeah.
started, or all these big players who,
Yeah.
or brands would have started, or they would have started with big teams
Yeah.
because they had big numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the groundwork is very similar to, again, like the session that we've had previously where we were discussing about a buying plan. I think that still holds true for a startup. For a startup to start, you essentially you will need a buying plan which has a certain budget assigned to it. You will need your marketing strategies. You would have done a competitor analysis. I think you would have, and like Shrishti is saying that maybe the buying plan can be at in the beginning be held by one person. Like one person is able to create the first buying plan, but as it grows and develops, businesses become more complex. Yeah, then you need like a bigger team. Um, and yeah, as Mahesh was
Yeah,
saying
even
that.
for smaller companies, yeah.
No, no, I was saying that even Mahesh was saying that
Yeah, like even
what
for
are they
smaller
aiming
ones,
at?
like
Like what is their
sometimes.
goal? Yeah, I think there's a lag. We
Mhm.
keep
Yeah,
talking at
but
the same
sometimes
time.
like my very first company, yeah, because there is a lag. I can't
Hmm.
when you're speaking, I can't. There is a little lag, and then so the very first company also we was a we the there was they were establishing multi designer stores, and so of course the planning had to be, or the buying had to be done by somebody who understood how to buy from designers and what to buy from designers. So there was a consultant who was onboarded to just help with the buying plan, or just in the capacity of a buyer,
Yeah, yeah,
because sometimes it might, just what product are you buying, might you might need somebody who understands the product. Like even for cosmetics, maybe you might need somebody who understands, a buyer who understands the product.
yeah,
So even for a startup, then they might require somebody who has some information and some understanding.
That's true.
yeah. But as Mahesh was saying that you have to have that clarity that are you just opening like a standalone store in a market, then maybe you can just run it the way you want to. If it's just one store, but if you have like bigger plans, if you want to grow the business, then yes, then a certain kind of team and push is required. Yeah. And I think that's the case with India. Like mostly
Yeah,
there
it's
are
all.
these standalone local stores. Yeah.
Now, what I was telling is that it's the like whatever that you're saying is that it's the aptitude of the, for the business owner to of for growth determines whether they want like really specific functions. If they're thinking that okay, yeah, in a year we have to grow really big, therefore we need these specific skills, they might want a consultant, they might want specific roles, and they would want to put in systems because they know that it's going to grow, and they need all of these things to be there before they hit that hit that growth, and so that there's no chaos when they are actually growing, or nothing breaks apart. But if, like how you're saying, that if they're just having like one store, and they're wanting to manage that store, and they're thinking for a couple of years, or for a very long time, or they're not even thinking about any other thing, they just want, their aspirations
Yeah.
are just to take care of one store, or one corner of a store, then they don't
Yeah.
need uh, uh, any
All
of these
this.
things,
Yeah.
because they have time in their hand. They can learn over a period of time. Slowly, they can learn from their mistakes, and one day they'll do well.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think even then, sometimes it happens is that, and especially if you've started something that you were passionate about and you are in love with, it's very hard then to say that to let this thing go, because
Yeah.
sometimes a retailer or a brand, especially these, the one store brand, they will sit with inventory because they have bought it with so much of a love that they can't, like, at the end of it say that I will now discount it.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
because of
Exactly.
course they do not even understand that they need to discount it, that they need that empty shelf and they need the money coming in. So yeah, so
That's
it
true.
becomes a longer process when things are not put into place. You get
Yeah,
caught in
this
a
the
cycle where
same
you're like,
thing.
oh, why isn't- hmm. Yeah, so you just get
Go
caught in the
ahead.
cycle of like, I have inventory, I need to liquidate it, but then how do I do it? I really love this product. Now I can't do anything, and then they sit with that for like a very long time, and then of course they will have fewer walk-ins because they have no newness in the store. So that actually becomes the problem with small, like one store or two stores,
Yeah.
people who started brands,
Yeah.
and they don't know this retail cycle, that at the end of it something
Yeah.
needs to be discounted and new things have to come in, that there
Come
is
in.
there
Yeah.
is this, this cycle that keeps, yeah, going
Yeah.
on and coming.
And even with
So
e-commerce,
in
I
the brand
think.
that I had worked,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I had worked that so there we had the old inventory, but because they were not discounted and they were full priced, and the loan that the company had got, just hold on 1 second. The loan that the company had got was on the non-discounted merchandise, but these are old merchandise. They did not want to discount, because now if they discount it, the finance team has already shown some amount to the to the bank, that this is the amount that we have, and they've already got the loan, and they don't wanted that, whatever, that working capital thing, not to happen for them. and uh, and yeah, so they were not discounting, and they had all of the merchandise. And when I had actually discount, they were like 2 years or more than 2 years merchandise. And yeah, they were like to a tune of, I think, maybe 35 lakhs worth merchandise. And when I discounted it, the owner was disappointed, because now his ability to get loan from the bank has decreased, and he has to work around another way to get that money into the business.
Yeah.
Uh, but if we would have just kept it for another 2 years, we wouldn't have even discounted. We couldn't have even done that discounted. The merchandise would have just, all the fabric would have torn apart, and we couldn't have even sold it even at this price. So sometimes we are just like attached to certain, emotionally attached to certain parts, or attached for other business complexities, that people don't want to let go of the stock.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's like a global thing. Like lots of these local small retailers, I think they just run their businesses the way they want to run it, and maybe they benefited from being the only kind of store and not on that high street for a while. But I think with internet and the e-com businesses and so many services that you get online, like everything's accessible now. You don't have to rely on a bakery that's in your vicinity, in your neighborhood. You can order from anywhere, and it's true for all product categories now. And I think more so in India, where there are so many services which can actually like deliver to your door in a matter of like minutes, not even like hours, like 15-20 minutes. I think Blinkit and all those, I think, deliver to you, right? Quite
Yeah.
quickly. I think that they
Yeah.
bring
Yeah.
the
They
item
do,
to
yes.
your door. So yeah, I think like with the changing time, you have to upgrade as well. Yeah, I think it's just
Yeah.
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 I
And
think,
like
yeah, I
some
think, is there
businesses,
anything
like
else?
maybe you, no, just like some businesses which might not even follow this retail cycle of discounting and all, like sari brands, and they don't really need to do it because their product they can, and they can have as much. And I think that's how they've become like these really 5 story sari brands, like these
Yeah,
mammoth buildings full of stock with saris, and they never go on discount, and they don't even, there is
yeah, yeah.
maybe
It's also the
for them
kind of
seasonality
product you carry.
will yeah,
Like saris are
yeah,
classic
and for them
items that
seasonality will be,
very small.
yeah, yeah, and almost like core only. They
Yeah,
and they, because there are
yeah,
no sizes, so you can sell them at any
yeah,
point of
yeah,
time, and
yeah. So there are
because
items,
the
product
limited,
items
yeah,
where just by being core or like even FMCG, maybe you are just managing inventory in that case. Or in a sari case, you are actually maintaining the service you provide to your customers. And usually, sari retailers will have loyal
yeah, the
customers,
experience, because
repeat
FM,
customers. So it's like, yeah,
yeah, because FMCG still you need to manage that like you said, the expiration date. You still have to be,
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
code it in a certain way that that these products are going to expire. But sari, like even a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old sari kept in a good condition can still be sold.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Sari and even any precious like gold, silver, jewelry
Metal, yeah.
also can stay for a
True.
very long time.
Yeah, correct. Yes, I think we've mostly covered everything. What do you guys think? Yeah.
Yeah, we've covered everything. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. We'll see for another episode another day.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that.
Thanks.
But maybe you can clip this off. Okay. Bye bye.